It all fails at the end of the day. It all fails. That was what I realized. All the big Christian ideas fall apart. Hey everyone, welcome to Joel Reads Bible. I'm Joel and I read Bible so that you don't have to, but today we're doing a bit of a different episode. Today I am going to tell you why I no longer identify as Christian. I've been reading the Bible on this channel for about maybe 6 months, 5-6 months now, and I thought I would do a video that's a little bit of my testimony, speaking to my deconstruction journey. In this video, I'm going to tell you what my childhood was like being raised Christian. I'm going to tell you once I moved out of the house, what kind of person I was in sort of my adulthood block. Then I'm going to tell you how my deconstruction sort of began. Then I'm going to speak to a few problems that I have with the Christian faith and Christian doctrine. And finally, I will talk a little bit about this channel, Joel Reads Bible. So if you're here for the first time, consider subscribing, like the video, leave me a comment. I do want to give a quick disclaimer. When you're listening to this testimony, try not to listen for reasons why I left the faith that I'm not saying. You know, a lot of the times I think Christians want it to be a hard issue. They want you to want to sin rather than just not find something logical. Sometimes they want to believe that you were never saved. I'm sure I'm going to get comments speaking to that as well. But just put all that to one side and actually try for a second to listen to what I'm actually saying. The problems I actually have with this belief system. That's going to go a lot further when it comes to responding to me in the comments. Which brings me to my second point. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I will do a follow-up video. If there's a lot of questions, if there's a lot of feedback, I will do a video that responds to all of it. This channel is meant to be a dialogue, even though most of the time I'm doing a monologue here. So yeah, leave a comment, join the conversation. I respond to most, if not all, comments. And again, we'll gladly make a second video if there's a lot of similar comments. So let's get into it. How was I raised? I was raised Christian, and you're gonna say, what kind of Christian? We were Bible-believing Christians. We were non-denominational. We went to a Mennonite Brethren church for a bit. We went to a First Alliance church. We then just went to a Bible church, a non-denominational church. There are people in my family that still go to Baptist churches, but I don't think we're that concerned with denomination. It's more that we were Bible-believing Christians who were, I would say, fundamentalists, absolutely conservative Christians. Think about how conservative you can get and maybe dial that back a little bit. But we were absolutely Christian fundamentalists. When I watch videos of other people speaking to their fundamentalist journeys, mine is very, very similar. We had very, very similar values and lifestyles and talking points and rhetoric in my family. We went to church, not just Sundays, a few times a week, and we would wake up first thing in the morning, have a little Bible study, have a little bit of prayer. It was just ubiquitous in my life. We were not Christian culturally. We were Christian actively. My mother was raising men of God. The whole point was that we would be strong Christians and we could lead in the faith and in our homes. We were incredibly Christian. And one fun thing was that we studied from a very young age apologetics. Now, for those of you who don't know, apologetics are fun excuses that Christians make to make sense or excuse stuff that's in the Bible. The Bible is very difficult to understand, and there's a lot of really barbaric stuff in it. It's really hard to take it at face value and appreciate it and understand it and all those things. God does some pretty dastardly things. So we need people to come along and make excuses in order to make sense of all this and, sweep stuff under the rug. Apologists are also kind of philosophers in a sense. That might be giving them a little bit too much credit, but they kind of make sense of the notions of God, the triomny properties, and other things like that, and try to make all of this make sense with the Bible. And it's really, really hard to do that. Actually, it's impossible, which is why I'm currently not a Christian. But as I was raised, we would go to apologetics conferences. I remember we went down to Colorado for a Summit Ministries conference. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But I remember like clever little lines. And if you've ever been into apologetics, you might actually know this one. They said, oh, these atheists, these non-believers will say, there's no absolute truth. And what you can say to them is, are you absolutely sure? They'd sit back and be like, that's clever. We got you, But the thing is that I don't know if there's a lot of people, atheists or otherwise, who believe there is absolutely no absolute truth. They must believe that there is some sort of truth in the world, in the universe, that is absolute. We don't always know the absolute truth, but there is an absolute truth. What the relativity usually refers to is morality, moral relativity. So you might say, oh, all morals are relative or morals are subjective. And then you can say, are you absolutely sure? It doesn't really work the same way. It's not really as clever. But I think that those are the sleight of hand things that apologists do. They make you think something so clever, but they're, in this case, straw manning or mixing up terms a little bit so that it doesn't really mean what you thought it meant. Well, you get what I'm saying. It's confusing what people are actually saying so that you can easily answer it. But these are the types of things that I thought were so clever. They really hooked me in. I was like, yeah, Christians are the smart ones. We know what's going on. The rest of the world, they're just like out of their minds. Another massive part of my childhood was the Institute of Basic Life Principles, which was run by Bill Gothard. I don't know if anyone watching this video will know that name. But this was an incredibly conservative Christian group. The girls wore burlap sacks, like very boring, same outfit. They were kind of like Amish, but dialed back a little bit. The boys all wore, black slacks and a white button-up shirt. Those were the people that were really, really into the Institute of Basic Life Principles. But then there were people like us that dressed relatively normally. But look, always had a lot of kids. We have a pretty big family. But we got all the literature, all the stuff that the Institute put out so that we could study it and read it and have it as part of our lives. And the Institute of Basic Life Principles is, if it's not a cult, it's really close to being a cult. It's not good. And there are some things that I know because of the Institute cause stress in our family. They weren't good. I'm not going to go into the details here, but that was just part of my upbringing. A very conservative, more so than anyone else that went to any of the churches that we ever went to. There'd be just like normal Christians kind of thing. And then we were like just heightened. So it was actually a really big part of my growing up. My parents were also friends with, before he got super famous, Ravi Zacharias. They went to the same church and they were always supporters of his. I don't know how they feel about the allegations that came out after he passed away. I haven't really had that conversation with them. They were huge fans of his, and Ravi Zacharias has a particular brand of apologetics. He was a leader in the apologetics world. He had a lot of preaching videos, all of which we watched. I would watch those. I actually really remember enjoying them. They were thought-provoking. I would think things through, think about things differently. And they were a pivotal part in my indoctrination. So this is how Christian I was raised. I took all of that on and did believe that I was a Christian. I only thought of myself as a Christian. Okay, there wasn't really any doubt there. I was sure Christians were on the right side of history. I was sure that we knew the truth of things more than these other worldviews. I was a Christian. To give you an example of that, one of my favorite singer-songwriters is Tom Waits. I remember listening to one of his songs. It's called Road to Peace. It's a great tune. There's a line in that song that goes, "The fundamentalist killing on both sides is standing in the path of peace." And at the time I was like, well, you can't blame fundamentalism. Like, fundamentalism is good. It's good. You need a foundation. If you don't have fundamentalism, you're just blowing in the wind. You need that. Yeah, of course, if it's Muslim fundamentalism, it's bad. But Christian fundamentalism is good, you know? It's not good to not be sure of things. You need fundamentals. You need a foundation to build your worldview on. Of course, now I can see that fundamentalism can be a huge problem. It's better to be dynamic and to look at things willing to move and change and renegotiate ideas. That's really probably the way that we can move forward. Sitting down in one spot and going, no, this is right, even though everything around you changes, or it's just not working and it's never worked, it doesn't seem like the best idea. Could some ideas that we practice today or are in our systems today still be great ideas? Yeah. Could they be great ideas for many years to come? Sure. Maybe they're the best idea. Maybe somewhere along the line we've already come up with the best idea. But we can always look at it again and look at it again and make sure that that's always the case and be dynamic with that. We don't have to throw everything away, but we have to be willing to be honest about whatever it may be. Fundamentalism, unfortunately, doesn't give you that luxury. So I ended up leaving home, as a young man is going to do. And as soon as I left home, I stopped going to church. So what was my lifestyle like as a young man who really just didn't want to get up in the morning? And that's the reason why I left the church. I didn't feel drawn to it. I didn't feel like I needed to see another preacher. I had seen a lot of sermons in my life. I wasn't hearing stuff that I didn't know. I wasn't hearing anything new. I do like a good sermon. I've always liked a good sermon, a dynamic sermon, somebody that starts with a fun story and gives me an idea and then comes around at the end and does a callback or whatever. It's fantastic. But I wasn't always getting great sermons, a lot of boring stuff. So I was just like, not that interested. I didn't really care for the social aspect. I'm introverted, so it's like I don't really like being in those types of situations. I don't need to shake the hand of someone whose job it is that week to greet people at the door. That's just not interesting to me. I wasn't really that drawn to the music. I'm not a big worship music fan. I have always preferred hymns. I like the musicality of them, and I enjoy the poetry of them more. Going to a modern church with praise and worship songs didn't do anything for me. And then going to a dusty old church, they would never play the hymns properly anyway. So there's really no reason for me to attend church. And ultimately, I wanted to sleep in. But I still considered myself a Christian. I would read books. I would go ups and downs where I was like not that interested whatsoever, and then something would pique my interest, and I'd watch a debate, or I'd read Heretics by G.K. Chesterton or Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton, and then I'd just like not care again. And so it was kind of like that for me, ups and downs. But anytime I would talk to someone and let's say moral relativity would come up, I'd have a conversation where I'd sort of preach objective morality. It was really any time there was a conversation revolving around something Christian or anti-Christian, I would side with the Christian view. I wasn't always overt with it. I wasn't always like, well, I'm a Christian, let me tell you this. But it was more of a, let me use apologetics and sort of philosophical musings to bring you to the conclusion that would be the Christian conclusion, and then maybe you can go find, because I wasn't brave enough to be like, well, I'm a Christian, so blah, blah, blah. And I also didn't want to scare people away. I didn't want them to be like, oh, you're just a Christian, I'm not going to listen to you. So I thought it would be smarter to be a little trickier with the apologetic without selling the worldview directly. And I think Jordan Peterson does some of that. He might genuinely not believe or not know what he believes or find it complicated, but it seems to me as though he certainly does subscribe to Christian doctrine. He just doesn't want to completely say he's a believer because a lot of people might write him off. I do also want to recount a time where I watched somebody debating Christopher Hitchens. Hitchens just went off and started just mowing down the Christian doctrine with like rapid fire problems, rapid fire issues of like lapses in logic, crazy things you need to believe to make it make sense. And at the time, I was like, I knew all those things were true that he was saying. He was speaking to the truth of what Christians believe, I should say. But I was like, he's out of his mind because he's going at it all the wrong way. He can't start with, a talking snake is stupid. He can't start with the talking snake. He has to start with Jesus. He has to start with this other thing that makes sense, that we can believe, that's important, or objective morality for me. We need objective morality. Then we can start to build around that axiom. We can start to build this worldview so that once you get to the snake, or you get to other ridiculous things, you can go, yeah, well, it's 100% in the realm of possibility because I already believe all this other stuff, right? I'm already sold on all this other stuff. So if that's not a Christian, guys, I don't know what is. Okay? I was very, very Christian, as you can hear. I was believing things axiomatically, okay? That is pure, true blue Christianity. A lot of Christians will say, as I said earlier, you wanted to sin. You just wanted to sin. That's why you're not a believer anymore. I didn't. I did not need to sin. And if I did want to sin, by the way, I was very, very confident that God would forgive me. I know the system, okay? You can sin and then God will forgive you. You could be a serial killer, you're still going to heaven. I believed that. So if I wanted to do some sort of regular sinning or even really bad sinning, I probably still would have had the perspective of someone who believes that they can repent. They can struggle with the sin and they can repent. But I did not feel like a really bad sinner. I was just a regular run-of-the-mill sinner. Sometimes I might bear a little bit of false witness, Sometimes I might have a little bit of lust. But superficially, and it's very silly, but superficially, I didn't smoke and drink, do any drugs or anything like that. I wasn't wildly promiscuous. Yes, I had more than one girlfriend, okay, in my life. I do like saying rude jokes, but I've never thought that, God cares about swearing or innuendos. Maybe he is really concerned about that stuff, but I personally was never like, oh no, I need to reject this God so that I can say the C word. I've never had that sort of conviction. I didn't need it to not be true. That's what's really important here. There was no motivation for me to have this not be true so that I could do X, Y, Z. I live pretty conservatively and a pretty clean life. So how did my deconstruction begin? This is my theory. I think that when you stop attending a church, when you stop constantly being inundated with the thing you're indoctrinated with, the indoctrination starts to unravel. And I think that's what happened for me. It wasn't a very active thing. Again, I would watch debates with Christopher Hitchens and William Lane Craig or whomever, and I would always side with the Christian. My indoctrination started to unravel, and I was living my life, and things would just come to mind. And I would start thinking about, what about that story of Abraham and Isaac? And that was actually the first one that kind of got me. I was like, I always thought that the ram was Jesus. If the ram is Jesus and God just poofed the ram into existence in that moment for Abraham to kill the ram instead of Isaac, then the ram is no kind of sacrifice. The ram has no value. God just like, bloop, put it there. It has no value to Abraham. He just found it. He didn't put in any effort to get that ram. And how does it have any value to God? He just poofed it there. But God has come up with this rule that you have to kill something, right? He's the one that's just like, no, I need something killed. That needing of something to be killed is completely arbitrary. It's just, he just wants it. We don't know why. There's nothing above God telling him he needs to need that, or it's just this arbitrary desire to have stuff killed for him. And in this case, it's something killed that has absolutely no value to anyone. He just made it to be killed. So I thought if the ram represents Jesus, then, is Jesus' sacrifice completely arbitrary and pointless? If this is all of God's design, and the wages of sin doesn't have to be death, and there doesn't need to be blood sacrifices, then Jesus' sacrifice didn't need to happen. So then all of a sudden, it's not so beautiful. It's not a wonderful story. It's kind of a stupid story. When atheists say, so God sacrificed himself to protect you from himself type of thing, even though it sounds like an oversimplification or some sort of a jab, like, it's so stupid. It's hard to really refute that. It's like, that is what it is, and it is weird. And I'm not going to go into it too much because I'm sure I'll make a video about this either as I'm reading the Bible or just a separate little video. But the answer is always, but God is just and he has to be just. And when you actually go to define the word just, it's not going to mean what you and I think justice is. It's going to be whatever God thinks is just. So just is a word that, it doesn't mean anything. And this is what I started realizing Christian apologetics were. They're all circular and no words mean what you think they mean. And it all becomes, I hate to say it, nonsense. But that's a little further than I had thought. I had just thought of the Abraham and Isaac thing. I thought this is arbitrary. And that got me asking questions. And I would ask people that I know, and I was never getting satisfying answers. I remember the next rug that was pulled out from under me was the rug of free will. If you have spent any time talking with Christians or being a Christian or thinking about the problem of evil or any of these things, free will, as much as it's not really in the Bible in any direct way, is a foundational pillar of Christianity. If you don't have free will, you can't make sense of Christianity. Christianity crumbles. Unless, and this is a caveat, you're a hardcore Calvinist. But nobody really wants to talk to these hardcore Calvinists because their worldview is consistent with the Bible, okay? They're consistent with the sovereignty of God, although a lot of them will sort of sneak in compatibilism or some sort of version of choice or something in the back door, and I think that that's a cheat. But if they don't do that, they're truly theistic determinists. Well, that really makes sense with the Bible, but that God is a monster. If you don't have any free will and you're still going to go to hell, whoever is putting you there is just purposely putting you there, and he's barbaric. For the most part, people believe in free will. They have to have free will. Their excuse for all sorts of things that occur in the Bible, and on the earth. It's not just Bible stuff. It's like our world today. Free will, free will, free will. So when I started understanding that we don't have free will, And I'm not a philosophical genius or encyclopedia when it comes to determinism versus compatibilism and all the different variations on that. But I believe if you're going to have free will, it is the freedom to make choices, free from influence. And I don't think we have that. We have our biology that we didn't choose, and we have our environment that we don't choose. And those two things influence all the decisions that we make. It's impossible. I can't see how it's possible to get outside of that to make a free will decision. And if you just add God to as the person that flicks the first domino or whatever, or knits you together in your mother's womb and knows creates the innermost workings of you or whatever, and ordains all your days, etc., whatever Psalm 139 says, it's very clear that even under theism, you can't have free will. It's impossible. Once I realized that, I was like, oh man, I can't believe this. It makes the whole worldview incoherent. So we've got an arbitrary sacrifice that didn't need to happen as some sort of piece of theater so that people can pretend like they're making a free will decision to choose this God or not choose this God. It completely crumbles and it all becomes absolutely incoherent. But then I always had objective morality as one of the things that held me in the faith. And I was like, well, what about this objective morality? I don't want to live in a world where the Holocaust may have been okay. I don't want to live in a world where we can't objectively say Hitler was evil. I want to be able to say that. Now, we can say that colloquially, but evil is just a word that we define. It is subjective. There's no objective morality. If there is some sort of objective morality from some sort of God, there's literally no way for us to access it. So the whole argument of objective morality, or that Christians offer objective morality, or that we need a God for objective morality, he underpins objective morality, it's all a waste of time because we don't have access to it. We still have to define what everything is. It's all defined in our minds, which is subjective. Even the word murder, thou shalt not murder, we have to define what murder is because not all killing is murder. So what makes a certain killing murder versus just killing? Well, we're going to determine that subjectively. We're not going to determine that objectively. There's no such thing as objective morality. You can claim it all you want. There is really no practical reason to claim it because we can't use your claim. It's absolutely useless to us. So even though I would love for there to be objective morality, all we have is subjective morality where we have to discuss things with each other and we have to work things through and try to determine what is the best behavior and how to move forward together as a human race. Even if we don't like it, that's the best we're going to get. We do not have a God here giving us objective morality. And it was with that realization that I didn't need objective morality holding me in that religion anymore. And I will say that I do believe that I was already sort of not believing. I was deconstructing. And I think that was one of the later realizations that I had. And at that point, it was like, well, I wasn't even really that concerned about it at that point because I was like, if it isn't there, it isn't there. If God doesn't exist, God doesn't exist. But I just want to say that I wasn't working hard to discredit objective morality so I didn't have to believe in God. It all fails at the end of the day. It all fails. That was what I realized. All the big Christian ideas fall apart. The best Christians can offer, okay? The best they can offer is one individual Christian believing that their particular interpretation of this text is absolutely true and sort of helps them be a better person. And that they have had some sort of interpersonal experience with the God of the Bible that makes them really know in their heart that this God exists. That's kind of it. That's the best you can get. And you can't really get like two Christians to agree on things, or they've had different experiences and oftentimes they see the book differently. But that's it. There's really no substance. If you try to drill down on any sort of substance anywhere, it will always fall apart. So how do I identify now? I don't say I'm an atheist. I really haven't thought that far ahead. I just say that I'm an ex-Christian because I'm confident that I know who the Christian God is supposed to be. I understand what that doctrine is. As you know, I was indoctrinated, and you can say, well, you don't really know or something. I've got it. Oh, it's just all head knowledge. Yeah, sure. It's all head knowledge, but it is knowledge in my head. And based on that knowledge, I'm like, oh, okay, there's enough things to make that God incoherent. So I can write that God off. That God doesn't exist. And just to speak a little bit to the idea that a lot of this was head knowledge, for me it was. And you can call me out and say, oh, you see, you weren't really a Christian. You weren't baptized by the Holy Spirit. You didn't cry. You didn't feel moved. You just weren't emotionally invested. I would sometimes feel emotional over particular songs and music because music reaches me. I'm a singer-songwriter. I like lyrics. I like melodies, beautiful melodies, harmonies. That's going to tug on my heartstrings. But yeah, I didn't really have some sort of a deep epiphany or something like that. And maybe the Holy Spirit never came to me. That's really not my fault. I was a true believer as far as I'm concerned. I did buy it. I did believe it. But I was more intellectual about it. So other people will say they have a relationship with God. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how you can claim a relationship with a being that is 100% not around. Just doesn't show up and is incredibly inconsistent. And I want to challenge you with that, because what I've learned through all the relationships that I've been in is that the best thing you can find is someone who is consistent. Consistency in a relationship is king. That's the best thing, or queen. That's the best thing you've got. Because with consistency, you have trust. You know who this person is. You can rely on them. That is a relationship. God is not consistent. You can claim he's consistent. But he's not consistent. Praying for things doesn't always work, if it ever does, and the how it works is absolutely inconsistent, right? There's so many times in the Bible where he behaves differently. He's angry, or he's merciful, or this or that, or whatever. He's not really reliable as to, oh, he's always going to be like this, or yeah, he's very consistent. He's just not very consistent. I have more of a relationship with the people I respond to in the comments of my videos than God has with you, because I'm actively communicating with this person and I'm working hard so that they can understand me. I want to be understood. I'm trying to word things so that they get where I'm coming from and they can understand me. God does not do that. By all accounts, his ways are higher. 100%, if you're a Christian, you will have said this. God is way above us. Well, how are we ever going to understand an eternal being? We're just like ants. Well, if you don't understand him, if you can't get your head around who this being is, you don't have a relationship with him. I'm sorry, okay? You're lying to yourself. You have a relationship with someone you know exists, you can spend time with, you can see is reliable, who is consistent. So stop claiming to have a relationship. So anyway, that's my little testimonial. And now what's going on with Joel Reads Bible? What is this channel? If you've made it this far and you haven't watched my videos before, you're new to this channel, this is a channel where I read the Bible. I'm reading the whole entire Bible from the very beginning all the way to the end, to Revelation or Revelations. Nobody knows what that book is called. And I read the Bible on face value. I try to let go of my historical indoctrination and things I used to know, but I'm not doing a very good job with that because I end up sort of noticing how the apologetic things that I thought were true don't match the book. And I'm finding a lot of fascinating things where things I was raised to know and learn do not match what's in the book. Or, believe it or not, as much as we read the Bible, there's some things there that I'm like, what? Abraham pimped his wife? I don't remember. Why didn't you guys tell me Abraham pimped his wife? Why didn't you guys tell me that Moses was saved from God killing him by his wife rubbing foreskin blood on his feet? Like, why didn't you tell me that one, Mom and Dad? You know, why didn't anyone preach on that particular story? So it's really neat. And I hope that you will subscribe and you will join me on this journey. In the last 5 or 6 months, the subscribers have grown, so people are enjoying it. I've been enjoying responding to people in the comments, like-minded people or Christians. I've enjoyed having those conversations. So please consider subscribing, like the video, leave me a comment. So if you have any questions, if you want me to go on about something, or you have questions about my experience a little bit more, or anything like that, please leave them in the comments. And again, I will gladly make a follow-up video. But for now, I will see you guys next time for Exodus chapter 11. Bye.